What's going on, guys? So if you struggle with finding the daily bias or finding entries in general, I strongly would recommend watching this video. It's going to help you find better entries and be more patient and wait for the obvious setups to appear. So watch till the end of this video. I'm guessing it's going to help you a lot, and yeah, enjoy the video. By the way, if you want to practice the inversion model or practice anything I teach, make sure you buy an Apex account. There's only one more day till the 80% sale expires, and again, they haven't been doing a lot of sales lately for whatever reason, so would definitely recommend getting a few accounts. I got like 5, I think. So use code Dodgy for 80% off. That deal lasts until midnight tonight, so make sure you get an account. And yeah, it's a really good way to practice inversion model. They're not a scam. I've gotten paid out from them, so really good company. So yeah. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with another video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over finding the, how do I explain this? Finding like the obvious things. All right, I think people overlook, like, ICT's never shared an Enigma. Okay, I'm sure you've heard that term, but the Enigma for me is waiting for the obvious fair value gap to hit, waiting for the obvious price action. I'm gonna show you what I mean by this. Okay, so I'm actually gonna pull up FxReplay here, and I'm gonna go to a random account. And what I mean by this is, if I go to the hourly chart, or yeah, let's go to the hourly chart. All right, and I reset. All right, to me, I'm looking for something obvious. I'm looking for an obvious inversion to activate. Okay, something obvious that's gonna give me the really obvious bias. Will this be every day? No, it will not. So I'm just going to play candles until I see a textbook fair value gap or something that takes out some sort of high, and then we inverse it, okay? So let's see if we get here. So we take out the high here. I generally don't know. Like, this would be perfect if this happens, because it would literally take me 2 seconds and I won't have to keep doing it. So let's see. Perfect. Okay. So this is actually invalid now because, as you guys know, we already hit this low. But this, to me, would have been the obvious one. So I'm actually going to keep playing this, see if I can get a better one. So now we have a bearish fair value gap here. It's pretty obvious. We've ran a low. So if we inverse this, okay, looks like we're not going to yet, then I'll go to the higher time, or the low time frame, and look for long. Let's see. Okay, well, it didn't give it to us. So what I mean by finding the obvious setup is, it's not going to happen every day. Okay, there's going to be days where we're going to be chopping around. There's going to be days where you're going to be in the 4-hour chart and you're going to have no idea what the bias is, right? And those days are fine. I have those days all the time, all right? If you can be patient enough to wait for the obvious day, okay, which may only happen twice a week, you will be very profitable. So here, for example, here we're in an obvious fair value gap. This is very obvious price action, all right? If I play a few candles, you see an obvious fair value gap here. Okay, right here. Now, check this out. Look at this. Look how obvious this is. Look how we clearly inverse this, okay? We form a nice order block here. So what can we do now? Well, we can go on the lower time frame and look for long setups, right? And you're going to see what happens. So when we're in those obvious areas, that is the time you want to be looking for trades. And there's going to be days where nothing's going to be obvious. Like, for example, let me see if I have an example. So I would say, like, right here. Here. Like, we don't have, like, we're inside of a bearish fair value gap, but we do not get any obvious bullish fair value gaps here. The first one we get is right here, okay? So we get an obvious bullish fair value gap there. That's the obvious trade. That's the obvious bias. Okay, and again, these are not going to appear every day. We're not going to get a fair value gap reaction as clean as this every single day. So typically, like, if I go down here, this is pretty obvious to me. If I go even lower, there's going to be things that aren't obvious. Like this range of price action, you can see how long does this last? It lasts 1, 2, 30th, 1st. It lasts almost 3 days. And you're going to see, is there anything obvious in this? No. The only obvious thing I see was you would have had to wait for a short, which didn't happen the first day. It happened actually the next day inside this fair value gap. Okay. Same thing with like this. This is obvious. But until we come back into this little obvious fair value gap, this obvious BPR, there's going to be a time, there's going to be a period of time where you won't know what the bias is. Like here, that's okay. So there is going to be days where you're going to want to wait for the obvious daily bias. Okay, there's going to be days where you're going to want to wait for the, it's just like waiting for the obvious fair value gap in the lower time frame. So like today, I felt like the bias was very tough, but then what do I see? Well, we get a really tough consolidation here. Okay, this is cleared. We don't know what the bias is, but then look what happens here. We get a very clear inversion. So now that's a clear long setup. And there's going to be days where you're just not going to know. You're not going to know what the bias is, and that's okay. Like even this morning, it was very difficult to tell what we're going to do here until we inverse this fair value gap. And imagine if this is a daily time frame. This could be a few days before you know. So if you can be patient enough to wait for like the obvious fair value gaps to break, the obvious weekly fair value gap to form, like right now we're in a very obvious weekly one. It's the only one here. Like if you can wait for us to be in these, you're gonna be able to trade good price action. But if you're trying to trade like, if you're trying to trade price when it's not as obvious, when we're just like chopping around, I mean, I would even consider this an example right here. Like this general area, is there anything obvious here? Not really. I mean, yeah, there's just nothing obvious to me here. So if you can stay out of these periods of time where we're not in anything important, like waiting for maybe this to hit, right? And waiting for reaction out of here, you will do yourself so much better. Okay, so again, this video is supposed to teach you the importance of wait for the obvious liquidity, wait for the obvious equal highs, wait for that. Like this is really obvious LR here, but if you can have the patience to kind of wait for that obvious draw, that obvious fair value gap that we break, okay, you will do so much better. Okay, and this requires patience, which not a lot of people have, but it will serve you well in the long run. So let me know if you guys enjoy this video. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm actually going to give you an assignment for this video. So what I want you to do is journal down 3 areas of price where you think we were in like an obvious spot or an obvious zone or an obvious inversion. Okay, and if you want, if I say everyone to DM me, I'm gonna get 1,000 DMs. I want to DM me because I just don't want a lot, but maybe show them in my Discord server and ask like people, is this obvious? And again, if a lot of people agree, well then it's probably an obvious and it's probably the right answer. So again, just more obvious examples like this. This is an obvious one right here. Okay, there's like this is an obvious fair value gap here. So if you can wait for price to come into these ranges with the obvious fair value gap, you'll do so much better. So this is just the really easy way to find daily bias, find any bias you're looking for, but you have to be patient for it. So again, and to reiterate, like what do we actually like do when we get into these obvious places? Well, we're looking for a reaction. So if I see a short setup in the lower time frame, I'll take a short. But I'm not going to look for a short here because we're not in anything obvious. Like we're just in between the middle of nowhere here. But when we get up here, that's when I'll look for a short. That's when I'll take a short. Well, let's say we don't get a short in the lower time frame here. Let's say go to the 1 minute and I don't see a textbook short setup. And let's say price ends up violating it. Well, then I'll go to the lower time frame, look for a long setup. So that's kind of what I'm looking for when we get into these areas, but it's only when we get into these areas. It's not going to be when we're in the middle of nowhere. What would be an example? So like right here, I'm not going to be looking for a setup here because we're not in anything important to the left and there's not even price action to the left. I'm going to wait till we get into like here, for example, because this is the obvious fair value gap. So this is just a really good way to find daily bias, but you're gonna have to be patient. So let me know if you have any questions. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you got to the end of this video, comment the word candle, and yeah, other than that, peace out.